There we go. Is that it? Am I up? And now I got to check. Okay. I just need. Okay, good. I am up. All right. Hi. Hi, everybody. Whew. How's it going? Yeah. So I just rode in hot. You're welcome. And give me a second. I don't even have the door shut to the studio. And by studio, I mean what would be a child's bedroom in another house. Hi. Whew. Man, it was a. Is this real? I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. Hello, chat room. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. Whoops, you're shorter than usual. Why is that? We'll fix that. It's the morning show. We can ease into this. Man O'Shevitz. Good show last night. At the whiskey. Just super fun. A joy across the board. Needless to say, I should be getting video of some of the songs later today. And it's I did some. You can tell my voice is a little fatigued this morning. I was just swinging for the fences with the high notes last night, and it was super good. I got about 3 hours of sleep. That's more of what it is than anything. But overall, I feel good. I did stop and get myself something to eat, so I apologize. Eating on the air is a no-no most of the time. But with 3 hours sleep, and I would have had time, like the last time I flew in, because the flight times out pretty good, but it is raining like sideways sheets. It is sheeting rain. The rain is taking a giant sheet on the city, and no one knows how to drive in it here because it's a desert. So I was like, I parked at the airport so that I wouldn't even have to wait for a car. I wouldn't have to, I just left my car overnight, just randomly on, at the end of the runway, just abandon it, dive out like I'm in Call of Duty or in GTA. And so I get in my car and driving back, and I pull onto the freeway, and it's just like red lights forever. And I'm like, you people are adorable. So I just pulled off and took surface streets and eventually made it. And there I am. Look at you guys. Yeah, I got more sleep than you did. Well, way to brag, Kaylee. Look at you. Do I ever cook? I cook every day. Do I drink coffee? Yes, I do. I actually have thanks to my girlfriend, I have a coffee right there. I have a triple espresso over ice, which it will take me almost all day to drink. Is this really tunnel surfing? Yeah. It could have been snow. That's true. You're absolutely right, Connie. If it had been, it would have been the accumulation would have been a lot less. But we're okay. I'm all right. I'm doing okay. Thank you guys for the concern. Thanks for new members. Where is it? I can't even point in the right direction. And and let's see, Luis. Oh, Christine's not a new member. She just renewed her member. That's awesome. Thank you. Hope you get sleep between shows. I will. I'm going to essentially what's classically referred to as collapse. And now I take a bite. Okay, there you go. I was just checking in to see how far along in the bite I had gotten at that point. It was snowing pretty hard at your office a little while ago here in Vegas. Good Lord. Yeah, it's I mean, I will say we've kind of heard the last for a while anyways. The last of the oh dear Lord, Lake Mead is half of its former self. But which is a good thing because we're getting snow and we're getting rain and it's great, and yeah, I'm happy about it. Thank you, Andrea, for pointing out the fact that I have a Cash App right there. There it is. I will get the Venmo up again soon. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know where the file went. And stupid PCs versus Mac. Mac is so much easier. Man, I have to say, last night there were a lot of highlights. Kenny Aronoff, the drummer, playing like that guy is a monster. Oh my god. And a monster among monsters, because the drummers that played last night, Joe Travers is part of the house band. That guy just kills. He can play anything and he's so good. And Matt Starr played, and he's amazing. And then Kenny Aronoff just rolls in and you're like, "Oh, I see." Like, like some people can just take, like, if you ever any guitar players out there who've ever handed their guitar to a player that is just next level, and you're like, oh, see, I was always blaming the instrument for me not being able to. I thought the neck was a little, or I needed to check the intonation and whatever, and then like they're like, oh, I see, it was it's what you do with the instrument that's amazing, right? So it was just beautiful to watch. And then Orianthi and Tracy Guns played together on Rock Candy, the old Montrose song. And it was just, I said it last night, but I was like, it was just nasty. It was so good. Like they like kind of dueling soloed with each other, and they're an item right now. So it was like watching a musical PDA. That's the only way I could describe it. Is two people were just making out on stage using guitars. It was fantastic. And the overall sound of it just gurgled with that like 70s, 80s back in the dayness of the whiskey. Things have gotten very clean in the last couple of years, very professional sounding. And it's nice that you can still hear the original sounds when the right people get up there and just lay into something. Just good. Hal needs a Zelle link, please. Okay, I'll see what I can do. Yeah. So it's just how was my sleep sandwich? It was all right. I slept up against the side of the airplane, like I always get a window seat and just conk out. So I got a little extra, like 22 minutes of sleep. It was great. In the 40-minute flight that we spent more time on the ground than we did when we would have taken off. Hold on, I'm bringing the chat again. Oh, we got a 666 too. We hit six. Yeah, we haven't done that in a while. I think that's a morning show thing now. Is that when we hit 666, it's traditional to give a $6.66 super chat if you have the means and wherewithal to support the show, to help us buy 666 Fifth Avenue. And I I know what many of you are saying, how you can't afford to buy 666 Fifth Avenue, and my response is neither could Jared Kushner, and it didn't stop him. So, anyways, hi chat room. Let's you look fabulous for so little sleep. Thanks. I'm holding it together these days. I'm pretty my health is dialed in on point these days. It's nice. I do have a ganky shoulder. But it's fine now. Like there was like a week where I was like, but it's fine now. So let's see. I mean, and I don't know why. We'll figure it out. Why Restream? I have to manually scroll it today. It's just being a jerk. I think it's the rain. Here comes the rain again, falling on my head like a. All right. Let's see. More. I have more money than Kushner, at least. Well, not right now, because he and Ivanka got that big deal with the Saudis. So they're definitely not hurting for cash these days, kids. Definitely not. And in the meantime, see if I can bring this up. There we go. Get this guy and open this page and be doing this kind of business. And eventually, I look forward to one day when we're able to jump to the do the trends and go to like Spoutable or something. But here we go. Mandalorian episodes come out. Normally, I don't give a shit about the promoed stuff at the top, but I like that show. It was a good time. Deplorable as trending with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because it's a badge of honor to be utterly fucking disgusting as a human being to be grotesque. We take pride in it. We're just ugh. Like when people see us and they're like, "That's real America." Ugh. Like if a foreigner, like if I was on a cruise and I decided to go like ashore to buy some trinkets, and if the locals went, "Ugh, that's America to me." That's what it means to be a true American. It's just, oh my God. After she leaves office and MAGA has crumbled, and all of them are trying to reinvent themselves to make some money, and like Lauren Boebert's doing, this old gun locker or whatever, like she's rehabbing armories or some shit, and Marjorie Taylor Greene does a travel show called Unwelcome. She just tour, she's just touring the country, or like countries all over the world. Where today I'm going to a country where literally they start booing the second I walk off. I didn't even know they had TVs in this dump. This is full of all kinds of people that are just, I would never hang out with if I had a choice. The whole country's this color. It scares me to death. But we're gonna take some pictures. Boo! Stop booing me. I just got here. All right, let's see. And Philip Bittner will be joining us at the top of the hour. I did make it in time for that. God damn it. Will be no longer allowing certain baby formula brands and sizes to be eligible for Ohio Women, Infant, and Children Benefits Program. Effective March for all sizes of Enfamil. All sizes of Enfamil, Prosobi, Nutramigen, or whatever, and Fugare formula only will qualify for Ohio WIC. No other brands will qualify. Let's see. After that, Similac, Gerber, Tippy Toe brands will no longer qualify for Ohio after this date for all questions related to this. Is deplorable. I mean, is it because those three brands are not selling wholesale to the state anymore, and that's why they're not available via WIC? Wait a minute. Can you believe this deplorable dude can't sit there and talk trash about Beau Biden and Greta Thunberg? Wait, is he just filming somebody in a restaurant and screaming at them, Alex Jones? Not that I give a shit, but good Lord. So I don't know. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that that those alpha male pills aren't working. You know what I mean? That like help you maintain like good blood sugar and all that. I'm just gonna go out on a limb. I'm not gonna watch this. I'm not gonna play the audio from it. Maybe we'll look at it this afternoon. We'll grab this video and talk about it, because I don't want to, dive past that. Yeah. What's behind these 12 little holes? LiDAR. Meet Opal, the first pro webcam made exclusively for Mac. Very exciting, but that's what's there. It's just different frame settings, so it catches, the whole lens catches different frame points, and then you can, yeah, never mind. Like that's going to be the norm in cameras from now on, by the way. All right, that's deplorable. So, breaking former President Jimmy Carter is entered hospice care. He's lived a long life. He's lucky. I don't. He should feel blessed. Oh, there you go. Oh, I see. He's going to live long enough to see a Democrat in the White House who was more destructive than he was. I see. Okay. Ugh. I mean, anytime that comes up, she's got to come up. Yeah, these are all promos. And by the way, most of the stuff that DeSantis is doing, I would like to say for the record, that gets into the news is stuff that he's using to out Trump. And it's working. He's grown from like 8% to 27% in some of these polls where he was hanging behind, and Trump had overwhelmingly got him, even in Rasmussen. So anytime, and most of what he's done won't amount to a hill of beans. It will affect no one's long-term life. If anything, it has either the record labeling response, like it makes people more interested in books he bans, or the Streisand effect, where it draws attention to the thing he's trying to force people not to look at. It's just, I don't know when these assholes are ever going to learn, but he doesn't intend to. Most of what DeSantis is doing is an outrage machine, because that's how you get Republican votes. Just saying.
The courage to be free. Ron DeSantis. The blueprint for America's revival.
Gonna be a revival. I have that on my shelf collecting dust. It's a good time. The deranged left started their attack campaign after Haley calls it. Conservatives are sick and tired of it. We're sick and tired of everything. We're sick of this. We're sick of y'all. We're sick of doing it. And we're sick of. We're doing and sick of this thing. After 2 years of experimenting on healthy people, they're still giving these useless and harmful vaccines to people. There is nothing about this vaccine that will do that to your face. It's goofy. I'll tell you what will, touching your face all the time like that when your hands are nasty. But I feel for this woman, but look at how she constantly touches her face. Yeah. She has contact dermatitis that she's making worse.
I'm not a doctor, but I'm telling you, that's what that is.
And then, we'll watch some of this too. I don't want to cover this in the morning show, but I want, like, Marge went on Hannity for her national divorce horse shit. So we'll cover that at some point. And then this is, I think, the main reason why it's coming up is that Comer was mad that Beau Biden died before they could prosecute him for nothing. They literally don't have anything that they would charge him for. He's just, he was just angry that they couldn't torment him. It's so weird. Hold on, is that an ad? Yes, it is. On that dude again, right? And again, this guy made the rounds. This video was all over the place. This dude in his like slip-on shorts shirt jackety thing with his lei around his neck, like he just got off a cruise ship, yelling at Jews and being just generally awful. With somebody filming him. A, reeks of a stunt, and B, like one dude. So if I may, and other people like blocking him. Hold on, is this? Sorry, 4 dudes. These are the 4 dudes. This is them. These guys, whole city, millions of people. And that guy, see the guy doing the Nazi salute? Did you see that? Did you see it? Back up. Hold on. I don't want to like play the audio on it because he's gross. But yeah, he was doing the Nazi salute at the car, and they back up and drive the other way. Yes, are they like camped outside of this particular synagogue or something? And right now I think they're technically trespassing. They're not. Yeah, hard to say. Anyways, like again, a total fucking stunt, absolutely grotesque. Representative of the fact that these guys are emboldened absolutely by the people that talk like this, and by Trump and MTG and all this crowd who are, telling these racists to let their freak flag fly. And at the same time, like, again, the vast majority of people in the city aren't that way. The bishop, right? Okay, GOP sparks outrage. I hate when they add my name to something like that. Sparks outrage after saying death of a child from oh right, the gun deaths. I remember that guy. That's an older story. So again, it's those stories always remind me, while they are awful and they should be, attention should be paid to them within reason, there's a tendency to exaggerate the depth of the story as opposed to the outrageousness of it in particular. And what I'm reminded of is the dude who went on a New York subway a few years ago. I think it was right before COVID, and was drawing swastikas. Remember that dude? He was drawing swastikas in New York with a Sharpie. Just had a Sharpie and was just drawing swastikas. And he came into this one car and he did it all over the place, and everybody was outraged and people were filming him doing it. And then he got off the train and everybody just got up and started cleaning the swastikas off and stuff. The like one dude with a Sharpie gets to define the entire populace. Meanwhile, all the people who stood up, all the people in that train who wiped it off rather than let it stay because it wasn't their fucking job. And they could have just gone, man, can you believe what this guy did? They cleaned it off so that somebody getting on the train wouldn't have to stare at that shit. And it was like, 9-1 good people to bad. And yet the story was, oh dear God, American society is falling apart and is racist and anti-Semitic because of what that dude did. Yeah, they used hand sanitizer. That's right, Celtic Mary. I would just, it's again, it goes to that Jimmy Carter thing. Look for the helpers or the, Mr. Rogers, Jimmy Carter kind of. Jimmy Carter's the helper everybody looks for when Mr. Rogers tells him to. Um, but you guys know what I mean. Like, does that make sense to everybody? Can we at least agree? And I love Rex on Twitter, but I gotta say he buys that bait more than any other human being I've ever seen. Like if Rex sees a video, Rex Chapman, if Rex sees a video of an awful, Rex Chapman will presume in his response that the world is turning into that, as opposed to there are 340 plus million people, and if everyone has a camera, you're going to catch crazy all day long. There will never be enough internet for the number of incidents, much less the number of angles of that incident that people are able to film when somebody does shit like that. Not a problem, Miss T. Marie. I'm just glad you're here. Jimmy Carter and Mr. Rogers are somewhat interchangeable. I agree. They're both lovely people. Fred Rogers endures, whether he's alive or not. We've always had crazies and racists, but they haven't been this bold for a long time. I would agree with that. I think they've definitely been let off the chain in some areas, but they're also they're kind of freaking out because they're not as welcome as they thought they would be. The blowback is real. I mean, look at fucking Dilbert. And can I just say, watching this Scott Adams horse shit play out, that if somebody's in the news and they're referencing this story and they actually go through the mental effort of going, gee, how would the cartoonist for Dilbert come back after being this awful? Like, how do you recover after? I don't fucking care. You know how he recovers? At home watching someone else be given the real estate that his panels used to have in newspapers and on websites. That's how. Next. Why the fuck is it even a conversation about how somebody comes back? I mean, I guess certain people will have this conversation because they're afraid that they're this close to saying something that awful all the time. And if they ever slip and say it or get caught saying it or taped saying it, that they're going to how would I get back? Whatever. But at a certain point, I don't know, fuck off. Go flip burgers. The dude's a millionaire anyways. He doesn't need anything. Why do I give a shit? I am not going to, and by the way, if you think I'm expressing any energy about this particular story and him and being sort of hypocritical about my amount of attention to this, I'm not even talking about him. I'm talking about the media discussing this story. And we've had many stories like this, and there's been cases where, in the case of like Johnny Depp or something, where there's a malleable story and it has to play out in the courts and it's questionable and blah, blah, blah. But there's the idea that we have to at all expend any energy worrying about the rehab tour of someone who is in a narrow field that, of winners that jockey for position all the time, whether it's music or the arts or politics or, where there's many people who want to do it, but few actually get to do it. Um, dude, you get bumped out of line. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I would never say, like, I don't know, man. What could you say in that situation? How do you even, in that situation? I don't care. You know what I care about? This is what I care about. I care about the aspiring cartoonist who grew up, with their um, fans of things like this, who have their own idea for one, but there's no real estate available in the papers that still print them. And sorry, kid. And guess what? Now there is a, like, what, 4 by 2 inch space available for somebody new. That's what I think. That's what I think. So, and that happens, like, for everybody. Like, you get fucked up that bad. And again, there's a difference between, like, and I maybe that's the crisscross. Maybe it's the fucking rehab part. Yeah, the rehab card canceled. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's that we um we went from people who have drug addiction, which is a biochemical relation to a substance that you have a really hard time, quitting. Heroin and fucking crack and like oxycontin and oxycodone and that kind of stuff. And we went from that to, well, he cheated on his wife, and the kind of show they have is like a family value show. So he went to rehab for being a sex addict, and that was how he solved it. And then who gives a shit if the fucking relationship falls apart 3 years later? That everybody's like, well, I dealt with my sex addiction, and we put, like, or whatever else they or now we're like retraining people to not be racist pigs, like to sit there and like it's like a Chinese re-education camp where you're going to send these folks. You know how people learn how to not be racist pieces of shit? By long-term interacting with other people. And I got news for you. They don't have to. They don't ever have to learn not to be racist. As long as they don't plan on interacting with their fellow Americans. I have no idea, and neither do you, if the weird shuffly person at the grocery store who never talks to anybody, always uses the help yourself checkout and walks out with their basket, is a horrifying racist or anti-Semitic person or whatever. No, I don't know. You don't know. I'm not going to assume they are because I like people. But if they are, what their solution has been, if I tell anybody how my awful thoughts, they react poorly. Is common decency an infringement on freedom? Yeah, well, the installation of it would be, technically speaking. That's right. You have the right to be a piece of shit. You do. But you don't have the right to expect the rest of us to play along. And that's the part they have they really have a hard time with. He was expecting everybody to play along. It's like you live in a little cul-de-sac, a little mental bubble, and you find out the hard way that that you created a dome over yourself and gave yourself the illusion. You Truman showed your relationships. You're under the impression, the misapprehension, that you know what people are like or what people feel because you've got a circle about this fucking big. And then it's a big shock to you when the rest of the world doesn't play along. And that's where these folks are. And I got news for you. You know how they're going to heal themselves from this? They're either going to, just like every other racist who's had a aha moment where, or anti-Semitic person or whatever has an aha moment where they finally get over it, is because they interact with human beings, and on a human level, they make the decision too. They're not going to be yelled at. They're not going to be cajoled. The more they are, arguably, they'll go, it's part of the system, making sure that the Jews and the blacks and the blah, like that. It just reinforces their shit. So at some point, it's their lesson to learn, and they don't get to learn it on our backs. I'm not responsible for you getting your shit together. There are too many good people in the world doing too much good shit, and nobody needs to put up with frigging anybody doing this stuff. I don't understand why there's even a conversation about it. It boggles my mind. How is he? Could someone even? Who cares? Here's a good idea. Who gets the spot? What's the new cartoon that everybody's, where's the new Bloom County that's coming up? Who's the new Garfield? What's the, have a fucking contest to find a young artist who has always dreamt of that, and then fucking give them a shot. I don't know why it's hard. I don't understand people. I'm always very confused. Yes, life's too short to waste time on hate. I, you know, like it's like me getting upset about Marjorie Taylor Greene. My my like irritation with that woman is like that deep. Because I'm not in her district. She's a single House Congress member out of almost 500. Who gives a shit? And she's not the government, and she can flail and say all of her bullshit, and Fox can carry some of what she says and drop the rest of it. But I got news for you. The impact that she's ultimately going to have, it historically in the trend of the country is going to be zilch. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be a shitty, mean-spirited television series you never watched and never went into syndication. Yeah, she's 1 out of 435. I'm telling you. Hal Marge is the Republican Party. Well, we want it to be that way. It certainly helps Democrats if she is, and that's one of the reasons why she gets boosted, from our side. But and she's indicative of a thought form, but that's if she's indicative of a thought form, it's of their collapse. There's no legs in that. There's no legs in we're going to, it took us 10 years, but the national divorce is here. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you. It's not happening. And again, it's do you pay attention to her? Sure, but mostly because of the trickle down of shit she says that ends up elsewhere, so you can head it off at the pass. And the more she makes an ass out of herself, the less of a chance her talking points gain any ground. So fine, but yeah, I have to say, like, I refuse to get upset about those folks. Yes, MTG is not winning converts. Exactly. She's not changing any minds, and she's driving a bunch of people away. It's fantastic. I don't care. What's your absolute favorite food? That's tough right now because I am currently on the carnivore diet, and I'm only eating like 3 things. But the only dessert I really like is consistently is chocolate covered strawberries. That's good stuff. And I've been known to fuck up a candy apple occasionally. Yep, meat, and meat. That's it. Yep. Ribeyes, eggs, salt. I just got egg bites because I'm gonna eat after. Yep. Raskin is doing fantastic. How did you get your tickets for Kiss's final tour? They're playing a few shows out west in November. Yes, I will be going. I don't. They haven't put some of them on. I'm on the Joe Rogan diet. No, he's not doing that anymore. He did it for a while, but he's not. He didn't stick with it. Smoked salt. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Captain. Appreciate it. Um, beef. It's what's for dinner. Yeah. So hot, wet egg farts. I don't get them. I will say, your keto, excellent. Lost 65 pounds. Good for you. I I basically I started doing it as an elimination diet, as some do, to just pull back and don't eat anything but very baseline things. 5 eggs. Yep, it's a way to go. 5 eggs for breakfast. You know it. And then slowly reintroduce things. It's been about 3 weeks now. And my, first of all, my grocery bills are through the floor because I'm I'm just full. Oh, and wait, and I gotta set something up real quick because I want to make sure that, yeah, okay, that's good. I want to make sure that when Phil comes in, he can get in. I gotta put my headphones in. Turn my headphones up. So, there we go. So, I started. I have high cholesterol. Eggs are bad. Jury's out. I'm just saying, if I may, I would revisit that. Conventional wisdom, especially on eggs, is turning on its head. What's my favorite Dylan song? "Girl from the North Country," sung by Sam Bush, Paul Church. If you have not heard Sam Bush's version of "Girl from the North Country," you haven't heard the song. And it's his the version, like he does it live sometimes, and you can see it all over the internet. But the version from Telluride is amazing. How's that? Joe Rogan diet. What is that? Eat shit. I'm pretty sure. Like he looks fairly bloated. Yeah. I love eggs too. I eat a lot of eggs. Yeah, eggs are not bad for your cholesterol. I thought you liked peach cobbler too. I do like peach cobbler. But we were talking about favorites. Yeah. Hmm. Moderation is key. I have a problem with moderation. Well, that's always the issue, I suppose. Egg yolks are gross. Only okay. Egg yolks are where the fat is, and you need the fat in your diet. Just saying. Cigar and pot diet. Yeah, shrimp aren't bad either. Nope. I don't think so. Hold on. I'm gonna check one thing, and I think, like I said, yeah, no, Peter Gabriel is fine. I don't know who floated that the other day. Oh wait, I hear in the distance, gathering around us,
Hmm.
ladies and gentlemen. If I can place them on the screen in one moment, I will put this together. Me and the good thing, and then I gotta grab the screen over here, and then I gotta. You can hear him fumfering in the background, but he's here with us. There we go. Let's go to here, and then we'll go to here. There, get him in the shot. Excellent. And then we'll get this. Oh, okay, hold on. Gotta turn this on and this off. And then off we go. And then, ladies and gentlemen, joining us, Philip Bittner. Hi, brother. How you doing?
Hey, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. I got about 3 hours of sleep last night.
You
Um,
had a show last night, right?
I did. I was I would say I sang my ass off, but it's clearly still there. And I feel good about that. I But yeah, there was some I don't know if you're familiar with Sammy Hagar's time with Van Halen per se, but
Hmm. Just being a child of the '80s, how could you not? But
right.
yeah.
But like Dreams, and I ended up singing Dreams Right Now, and Best of Both Worlds, as well as Good Rockin' Tonight, with the Montrose cover, the old Elvis standard, and the notes just got higher as the night went on. I think they were trying to kill me.
Good old Sammy. Yeah,
Yeah.
good old Sammy.
And his like best friend slash business manager was there at the show, and they because it was
Oh.
part of a tribute, and was just kind of like, he was basically sending Sammy videos all night because he's down in Cabo or wherever he is, and he's just sending videos of and I'm like, no
Cabo Wabo.
pressure. Yep. I'm like, no pressure, thanks. But so it was, yeah, it was a spectacular night. It was pretty great. I'm surprised I'm
Good.
able to speak, but I am, and we're all right. And how are you, first and foremost?
I'm fine. I've still got a little smidge of the cough left, but it's more or less gone.
Yeah,
I got my new
mine
painting
dragged
up.
for a while. Oh yeah, that's the one
Yeah.
you commissioned, right?
That is the one I commissioned. That is a painting by a guy by the name of Ilya Ripin. He was a
Hmm.
19th century. Well, he was born in Kharkiv, so is he Ukrainian? Is he Russian? I don't know. But
Right.
he made his living at the Tsar's court, and this is a painting of. It's called "The Death of the Tsarevich," and it's
Hmm.
famous because it depicts Ivan the Terrible,
Hmm.
Ivan the Fourth, killing his own son
Oh,
and destroying his own bloodline
what a what a
because his
what a
son had
lovely
his son
man.
had the yeah his son had the testicular fortitude to tell his father that a military campaign was losing, and in his madness and his fury, Ivan the Terrible killed his own son, and in so doing, as I say, destroyed his bloodline and deprived him of a successor. So he destroyed himself in the process. So I
Well,
don't know if you're
and
seeing
it
any
often
any
turns out like
reason
that.
why that might be
Yeah,
relative.
I can see why it's a favorite around town. I do actually. I think it's very impressive when you have guests over. And they're like, yeah,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
I'm saying something here.
Uh-huh. I'm getting. We're picking up what you're putting down, my friend. So, lots to cover. I'll let
Mhm.
you kind of start in this because there's so much going on.
Well, I mean,
Um,
since we
yep.
last spoke, we learned that actually there was a couple of attacks
Hmm.
that happened around the 1 year anniversary, uh,
Right.
but they were intercepted. Uh, we've seen we've seen the situation around Bakhmut deteriorating for the Ukrainian forces, but and also there's discussion, in the last say 36 hours of abandoning Bakhmut, of pulling
Bakhmut.
back, of
Right.
retreating, a
Yeah.
strategic retreat
Right.
from Bakhmut. And I know a lot of people will say, see, a lot of the people who are on the other side of this equation will say,
Right.
see, it's the Russians are inevitably going to win, and this is the beginning of the collapse of the Ukrainians. Of course, that's all rubbish. Um,
Which is
but
also, by the way, what
I
they
would
said
point out,
what they said the Russians were doing in Kharkiv. They said remember the whole talk about that from the
yeah,
Ritters and all the crowd.
they
They were all
said
saying it's just
Mariupol. They said,
it's a strategic pullback. It's not a they didn't lose it. It's a
oh, with the
strategic.
Russians, yes,
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Kherson.
Remember
You're
that was the
thinking,
whole.
you're saying Kharkiv.
I think it
Well,
was in
no, it's come
both.
true in Kharkiv as well. It's both
They
in Kharkiv and
they've
Kherson. Well,
said
they
it
can't
about
admit that they're,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Whereas I think what the Ukrainians are doing is, and maybe I'm looking at this in a biased manner. I mean, let's be honest. But
Hmm.
Bakhmut is not strategically vital. It
Right.
is an area where you get access to a bunch of roadways. Pardon me. You get access
Yeah.
to a bunch of roadways, and you can kind of break out from there
Right.
and send your forces in a number of different directions. That's
Hmm.
that's true. That's true. But you can also do that from a lot of other places as well. And there are other places where the Ukraine can set up defensive lines. So it's not like you break through at Bakhmut and it's just a straight, open roadway to Kiev.
Hmm.
Clearly, that's not the case. But also, what the Ukrainians have done throughout the last 4 months, I mean,
Hmm.
five, maybe even five, maybe three, but probably more like four, is
Right.
they have, as they did in Mariupol, created this massive suck for
Yeah.
you for Russian forces to just come and die on that hill, and they've been killing Russians around Bakhmut for months now, in high hundreds, occasionally in around 1,000 on a daily basis. They've just been
Right.
absolutely slaughtering them out there. So it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory for the Russians in a lot of ways. And again, I do not believe that it is massively logistically important or strategically important that the
Right.
Russians seize Bakhmut. But you know, you don't like to see Russians gaining territory
Sure.
and Ukrainians retreating, whether tactical or not.
Right.
So, but now finally, having also said that uh, uh, they're getting more weapons. The spring is coming. Winter is over. We went through it. Thank God it was relatively mild. Not just
Right.
relatively, it was incredibly mild. And we'll see what happens when the leopards are here. We know
Yeah.
they're here. I've had I've had two members of the Ukrainian military tell me that they've seen Bradleys inside
Oh.
Ukraine.
Huh.
And I contacted my sources at the Pentagon because I still have good contacts
Hmm.
at the Pentagon from my Afghanistan and my Iraq days.
Right.
And I checked with the Pentagon, and they said, "Man, we can't comment. Once we
Right.
we bring them to Poland, we can't comment on what's internally within Ukraine." Now that's not a denial.
No, it is
You'll
not.
notice.
But you
But
also,
it is. But
you
the,
can.
the response I had was, "You can
Mm,
ask, but I can't tell you because
right.
that's for the Ukrainians to tell you."
Right. Right. Right.
But I
I've always
I
said
think the
from a
Bradleys are
military.
here.
Yeah, from a strategic and military standpoint, it behooves everyone to know in the audience too that there are things you can infer from an admission or a denial, or your belief about the truth of an admission or a denial, and so and from that, judging from someone else's admission of another fact or denial of another fact, it is possible for intelligence communities the world over and the military of any multiple number of countries to extrapolate from the message they're hearing a some genuine actionable intelligence on whether or not somebody has a strategic gain or loss, or something has happened, or a leader has fallen ill and died, or blah blah, blah, all those kind of things. And so it is now the no comment denial is now standard fare on almost anything. It's almost like a uniform knee
Yeah,
jerk reaction, because if I can't tell you everything, I can't tell you anything, because I'm not talking to you necessarily. I'm talking past you to the person who's going, "Oh, he said this, and this person said this, and this person said this. So that means there's no other way to interpret it. This has happened." And that's,
yeah.
that's the issue they have with intelligence all over the place. So um
Well,
the
my contact at the Pentagon. I mean,
mm,
if you learn to speak their language,
yeah,
and what they and
which is
recognize the
alien
importance of what
lizard
they
language, if
don't
I'm not
say.
mistaken. Right.
Exactly, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. S-
Turn it down. Um, um, you
what
learn
the
to
hell are you? Sorry. Okay.
you learn to um, get information from what they don't say almost as
Right.
much as what they do say. So
Exactly.
his
Yeah.
response to me was that we would never comment on that. Basically, I mean, I don't remember the word for word, and unfortunately, it's on the phone
Hmm.
that I'm using right now. But it was basically the essence of it was, we're in no position to comment on whether or not armored, Bradley armored vehicles are inside Ukraine. That would be a Ukrainian decision to disclose that information, which is kind of like,
Right.
okay, you know. And then to have two Ukrainian soldiers, one of whom was just out in Lviv, say to me, yeah,
Mm.
I saw Bradley's on train track on train, flatbeds.
Right.
And I said, "Are you?" He's a young guy. He was a young guy, a young soldier in the
Right.
Ukrainian military. He said, "You sure you know what a Bradley looks like? Are you sure?" And
Right.
he was like, he looked at me like, "I'm a soldier. Shut up.
Yeah.
I know. I've been studying
Right.
this stuff." So I was like, "Okay, all right. If you say they were Bradleys, they were. I'm willing to believe it." So,
Right.
and then I heard it from another guy who's actually out in the east. So I think they're here. I think they're here,
Well, that's a
and I
possibility.
know they're not tanks.
I
They're not
um
tanks, but they
right.
are amazing fighting vehicles, and they're going to make a difference.
All right. Couple of things. One is Sarpis in there saying Bakhmut still stands, grinding away Wagner and regular
Yep,
RU Mobics, so they can't go anywhere else.
for now.
Are the tanks going to be a game changer? We hope they are. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I think so, certainly. But your thought? I mean,
we'll see. I think
ultimately,
so.
it's
I think so. Oh, you know what else?
yeah,
Well, yes, I think they will. I think that the one element that they are missing is air power. But
Right.
what they will be able to do with the fighting vehicles, the Bradleys and other NATO level fighting vehicles, in conjunction with tanks and with artillery, uh, and with drones and information warfare and and
Right.
satellite imagery and all the rest of it, they will be able to adopt proper NATO fighting tactics, the combined arms doctrine, that
Mhm.
is just so much better than anything
Right.
that the Russians use.
Well, and you have
Russian doctrine is rubbish.
I will say that it will absolutely help if they have a coordinated effort. But when you're talking about battlefield tactics or whatever, as much as Elon Musk thinks tanks are useless, the reality is that you're talking about one tank acts as about 200 to 300 infantrymen in terms of its impact. The
Okay.
big fancy ones. And when
Yeah,
you're
yeah, I'm
talking
okay
about
with that.
Yeah, when you're talking about the Ukrainians against the Russians, one of the biggest advantages the Russians have is individual human beings. And so the only way you answer that is with armament. You've got to
Mhm.
stave them off, let them waste ammunition and whatever they, especially when it comes to something like a Bradley or even the Leopards, the 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 arms that the Russians are using against them in their infantry positions are less effective against those things, and they don't replenish. There was a quote that I saw the other day which I thought was really fascinating, and I think it was from like Finnish intelligence initially, but it's a pretty known factor. I think their foreign minister at one point had stated this amount, but it was that Russia can only produce 40 cruise missiles a month. They can only
Yeah,
make
I saw that.
40, but they use 40 missiles in a single strike. So the one where you guys a couple weeks ago, where they were aiming stuff at the surrounding area of Kiev, or they went after the infrastructure for a good stretch there, uh, each single strike was a month of cruise missiles, was pushing their ability to have those further and further into the future. So
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah,
also
now there's one other thing I want to. We're only 15 minutes into this, but do not let this hour end before we talk a little bit about something that's happening a little off our general talking point, and that is to discuss what's happening domestically with my former employer at Fox News. But I want to touch on a couple of other these like news bulletin points, and then we can talk a little bit
yeah,
about Fox. Um,
yeah,
you mentioned the cruise missiles.
yes,
Well, today there's the announcement that a couple, at least, well, more than one, but there's
right,
pictures of one drone went down outside of Moscow. And I mean,
yes,
the
right.
Ukrainians will never admit to it, but clearly it was a Ukrainian drone attack that they
Mm,
planned to hit Moscow, which psychologically would do a lot for Russians. So there's that. There's the fact that the Belarusian president is in Beijing. I'm
mm,
surprised he left Belarus, but he did. Alexander Lukashenko, I
right.
guess, trying. I'm guessing that it had something to do with China's BS proposal for peace.
Okay, so
We'll
the
see.
couple of things. I do want to I do want to talk about the drone stuff in Russia to start with, because that's a huge
Yeah,
nut to crack. That's an amazing aspect of the story that's kind of going on, no pun intended, under the radar currently as far as the news. And then but we'll get to that in just one second. But Lukashenko, for those people that don't remember, is the president of Belarus, and
has been since
lately,
the fall of the Soviet Union.
yep. Lately, Russia has commandeered their military factories to try and make arms for them. There's been a lot of footsie about whether or not the initial launch was during a phony war game that the Belarusians were doing with the Russians to attack Kiev. That was, and now he is the question right now is, what is he doing in Beijing? Is he there to talk about the 12-point peace plan, or is he there to try and shore up some lethal aid from China and say, yes, you've got me and this other country, and try to play up, we have our Moldovan territories and we have Transnistria and Iran, and you
We
guys
got the
want to do a,
Serbs. We got
yes,
yeah.
right, to try and be a power player in this system, like one last time before it takes a giant shit. That's the concern part, or whatever. I got news for you. As far as from the Chinese side of this is, they don't have a lot of help to give right now. They just don't. And secondly, that there is a huge face drop off. There's a huge face drop off of them meeting with him instead of Putin coming with his begging bowl. To there.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, she sent Wang Yi and some of the other people from his cabinet there, and is going to make another trip himself supposedly in the near future. But the fact that, like, Putin went, I guess, during they met during the Olympics, and they had that little early in the war meeting,
Right.
but since then hasn't been back. And here comes Lukashenko as like a messenger. It's a little embarrassing geopolitically. Like, he can't afford to travel because he might end up killed, and that's not a good sign. That's not something that China will resonate with. And so I do think this is going to be a bunch of flapping, quite frankly. It's going to be chickens in a yard.
Yeah, I suspect so. I mean, he's the junior partner. He's the kind of middleman who might go and test the waters in Beijing, and then Putin. I mean, she will not go to Moscow. It'll be Putin that goes to Beijing. That's the darn sure. But I could see Lukashenko as being the kind of the
go between,
the junior partner that's the go between guy. So we'll see. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think Beijing has a lot to give.
right?
And again, the fact that it was Lukashenko, maybe there's some minor concern there because, the border with Belarus is not very far from the capital, so they could. But then they tried that at the beginning of the war with their 40-mile column that got tore up, and that's a year ago. So the Ukrainians have only had time to shore up more defenses. So they're not going to take the capital. There's no way they're going to take the capital.
No,
So,
and nothing's coming from Belarus. And the day, by the way, the day China sells them the first drone or boxes of ammo, or like they're doing like 122 and 152 millimeter artillery shells, like the first official shipment, because I have no doubt there's a little bit of under the table going on. That's been happening, right, already. But the first day any of that goes above the table and literally gets sold as, here's China giving this, the trade between the United States and the European Union and China ends that day. Everybody's just like the chips, the employers and the employees of the chips manufacturers that no longer can produce those chips that night at midnight. Like, you got to go home or you're going to stop being an American. That happens that day, and the Chinese know this. Yep. They have to know this. So I think this is just chickens flapping in a yard. But I will say that, and I don't know that we got a chance to dive into the 12-step program that China put forward, which is a bunch of fucking blather.
Basically, it's a bunch of ambiguous, broad strokes.
Right.
And the only thing that has any merit to it is this idea of maintaining territorial integrity, which Zelensky spoke about at a press conference. But also, whose definition of territorial integrity?
Right.
Because the Russians are convinced that there are 4 provinces that they absorbed under referendums that were held under bayonet make them legitimate parts of the Russian Federation. Ukraine kind of sees it differently.
It's worse than that, because ever since this war started, ever since they attacked Ukraine, apropos of nothing, they have been saying that all of these lands are theirs, including parts of Norway. There is not a part where you have a conversation with a the leadership of a particular country that says, okay, we're gonna have a friendly discussion about whose borders are where and how they stay, when they are literally actively saying, P.S. we actually believe, Poland is part of Germany, conversations like that. They're having that kind of a conversation. It's an
Yeah.
absurdity, especially considering
Yeah,
they
but
start. Yeah,
that'll be if well, and also, by the way, it's not going to go anywhere. The Beijing's 12-point program
look,
is
it's horseshit.
it's
It's ridiculous. It's
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 horseshit.
it's
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 horseshit.
horseshit
It's
diplomacy.
ridiculous. It's not going to work in and of itself because the I mean, I said it on Ali's show on
Yeah,
what was it on the 24th. It's all it is these kind of really broad strokes. You would have to sit down across the table and hash this stuff out, and it would take months and months and months. And it's also not in good faith. So,
right.
and I mean, Blinken was in Uzbekistan today, and he said he didn't just, despite all this kind of talk, Moscow is not interested in peace talks.
No,
They're
and
not.
that's the embarrassing part.
Moscow
Like,
still
you're not.
foolishly thinks that they're going to win this war.
Look, China could have stopped this war yesterday with that. If that 12-point plan included them saying, and for all the pressure that they think the United States or the West puts on Ukraine to be a puppet state and blah 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 blah. If China had actually said in their 12, we believe everybody should go back to the borders of 2014 and then have a conversation about the territorial integrity, and that line about territorial integrity and national sovereignty was in line with get the fuck out for
Yeah.
Russia, that they would have had no other choice, because it would have been a diplomatic flanking maneuver of. And by the way, that's how China really feels. That's their concern
Well, no, but
is
sure,
yeah,
but it also would have deprived all those who can now say in the West, because ultimately what Putin really would like to see is disruption internally within the West and
yeah,
division in the West. Is that now all those who say, well, see, the Ukrainians are just acting unreasonable. They won't even consider the 12-point program from Beijing.
right.
If there's anything that actually comes from that 12-point program, it's that. There's never going to
Yes.
be actual negotiations. This will be used in propaganda. It will be used as a talking
Well,
point for a bunch of
it's
people who increasingly will be like, oh, we're getting tired of this whole war thing. And the Chinese have this 12-point program. The
right,
Ukrainians are completely unreasonable.
right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, well,
Well, that's what
no,
Mate and all
actually,
those guys were all saying.
Zelensky, yeah, Zelensky, who still refuses to debate me, even though he agreed to do it. Um, I mean, Zelensky put out a 10-point program, what, 3 months ago?
Yep.
It's just his 10-point program contains things like you got to go back to 91 borders, you got to return our children
Right.
and all the people
Yeah.
you stole from us, and you
Yeah.
have to pay us reparations, which as a starting point for the Russians, it's like, I'll never accept that. But it's
Right.
still a program. It's still a
Yep.
legitimate 10-point peace plan, and it is legitimate in the sense that you started this, so it's
Yes.
on you. That's on you, Moscow.
Yeah.
So
And there was
no,
I
the
would say this is chapter
Beijing
4 in
proposal is
the.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I would say this is chapter 4 in the sort of weird tale of peace negotiations that have been going on since the beginning. One where they sent, where the Russians had a spy in the Ukrainian group at one point. The one where they tried
Yeah,
to poison one of the other people there.
poison people.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this is them going, hey, they're not going to listen to us again. So can you send, China? Can you just can you put out a thing that'll maybe make everybody stop and let us reload? Because that's what this is about. Like, ultimately, if any,
Yeah.
the slow roll post
and
2014.
to,
Yeah.
and to diminish support and sow division internally within the West, which is the only way Russia's going to win this war is if the West stops supporting Ukraine.
Yep.
It's the only way. And in order to do that, they need to pull this kind of crap. And I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago. I was having a debate online with somebody, which I really shouldn't do, but I got into a debate with somebody
It's
online.
difficult. It's difficult
And
sometimes.
I know
Yeah.
sometimes I just can't resist because some of the shit they
Uh-huh.
say is just so stupid.
One,
Um,
two, three, four.
and
I declare a flame war. Right.
yeah, I know it's terrible. But I made the point. I said, look, you know, the Ukrainians are never going to submit to Moscow rule. So really, and I made this point with you before, but I think I articulated to this guy particularly well. Is that so? If we start from the base point that the Ukrainians are never ever going to again submit to rule by Moscow, then that leaves us two choices. We either support them uh, in their push to military success on the battlefield and resumption of 1991 borders, or we withdraw our support and we watch a genocide. Those are our two options. That's really it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a potential third option for some sort of negotiated peace, but I mean, the question of what the border will look like at the end of this conflict, I don't think the Ukrainians will accept anything short of 91, because if they do, then the Russians will come back again.
Right.
Um, so that my point really is that because the Ukrainians will never submit to Moscow rule again, if we were to withdraw our support and Russia came in here and beat them on the battlefield, let's say that happened, and they
Right.
took control of all the major cities in Ukraine, there would
Yeah.
then be an insurgency that would be supported by the general population, and that would mean that the only way for the Russians to put that down would be through genocide. And that's
Right.
not hyperbole. It's not crazy. They've done it before, and they have
Right.
no compunction against doing it. They would, and, oh, sure, they might dress it up for the 21st century and put them through kangaroo courts. That, oh, you're supporting an insurgency, but it still would be rounding up,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people and most likely slaughtering a good fair few of them. So,
Right.
do we have the stomach in us to withdraw support and then subsequently watch a genocide?
Right.
I would argue we don't.
No, I agree. Like I was gonna let me see. I want to bring something up real quick, just because of somebody
Mm-hmm.
was saying in the chat room. Just to remind everybody, this is just from this week, and this is you're not gonna be able to read this. I think on your end, Phil, because it might be too small.
No, I can try.
But it's Hong
No,
Kong
it's too small.
exports plunge by most in 70 years as demand plummets. Imports fell 30% from a year ago, worse than expectations, and shipments to markets across Asia dropped 40% or more. So this is without the US's lack of demand, that we're shifting what we're buying and how much and from where. And a bunch of the factories for the things we buy most often, like IKEA and the like, have moved as quickly as they can
Mm-hmm.
out of China and the surrounding areas that they control and into places like again, you're going to increasingly see that if you go to IKEA, they may still have backed up, old stuff, but the new stuff will start saying made in the Czech Republic. That's common right now because they've moved a bunch of the factories there. Um, this is I don't know if people can grasp like this number like is insane in terms of volume. We're because 3-4% of China's exports, it works out to trillions of dollars in financial trade, like money moving around, buying goods and then selling them for a profit. Like just a little slice is an enormous impact on them largely because it's the rest of the world will just find the problem with consumers is we're fickle and we don't give a shit. And so if the whole world is like an impulse buy when it comes to most of the stuff that China makes, it is not crucial. The crucial stuff, you're stuck. If you want high-end supercomputers and the like, and somebody in the chat was asking about China's AI, it's ass. So they'll have stuff that can mock ChatGPT. They'll have facial tracking stuff, but that's really low res and not very difficult. You just need the big enough servers to do it. It's not the complicated stuff. Not even close. They're going to be 10 years behind in the next year. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
On top of that, like
I mean,
that's a huge fucking thing right now. Hong Kong exports plunging 7 and that's after if where is it? Let's see if we go in here. Yeah. There we go. There you go. So all the factories that the U.S. toy company Basic Fun works with in China told workers not to return right after the Lunar New Year, said Jay Foreman, because there was a flood of inventory in the last half year that didn't get sold as consumer prices in the U.S. surged. Everybody's got backed up inventory. They're still moving around, and nobody's buying any of that stuff. And in the interim, everybody's leaving. In the interim,
Yeah.
the factories are packing their shit. They're like, well, we got too much stuff. It's
Well,
sitting on the shelves.
their version of globalism is done. It's finished.
Yes.
That's not
Yes.
that is not. Now there may be some version of a global system, but it's not going to be that. It's not going to be what we
Nope.
thought it was going to be. Manufacturing is not going to be just from China. It's going to be much more localized. And with the
Mhm.
1-2 punch of the pandemic and now this historic war,
Yeah.
nothing is going to be the same. Again,
Nope.
no matter what happens here in Ukraine, Europe is going to be fundamentally different. And because of that, that's going to affect markets around the world, how they interact. China
Right.
is, as you have repeatedly said, is living on borrowed time. So that element is going to be shifted. No, we are living, nothing's going to be the same after Corona
Nope.
and this war. It's changing. Our world is going to be
Yes. It is
fundamentally
a
different
fundamental shift. Yes.
and also, and will America if we do localize,
Well, your sound got better there for a second, and then you froze. Did you guys notice that, or was that just me? Hold on. Let me yeah.
It's somebody called me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That
Oh,
happens.
did I lose you altogether? Hal, you still
Nope.
there?
Nope. I'm still here. I hear you. We hear you. You just your screen's
Yeah.
frozen.
Sorry,
temporarily.
buddy. Somebody, of course,
you're not.
called me right as I was in the middle of talking to you.
Well, that's why we turn off notifications and or use the focus part of our iPhone. Right. I don't know if you're. Yeah, it's a Russian thing. They just I blame Elon Musk. Go ahead.
Sure. Anyhow, I it's not going to be the same. So,
Mm-hmm.
the European Union's going to change. I remember that. Sorry, I got distracted.
Yeah.
So, but back onto my original point. If we are going to start manufacturing more locally and not relying on international trade, is America going to want to expend its money doing what it has done since the end of the Second World War, and that is stabilize the international sea lanes that allows for that version of globalism? Or does that stop? And if we stop doing that, then the entire world has to readjust its vision of what a global system
people have not
is going to be.
Look, for all the people who talk about, especially the Jimmy Dores and all that crowd who point out the American military bases around the world without pointing out that they are effectively there just to enforce Bretton Woods and allow universal free trade to actually happen unmolested, whether we benefit from it directly or not, which is the part I think they have the hardest time grasping or can't even wrap their head around. Once that goes away, do you realize the violence that is going to happen on the coast of Africa, the coast of South America, in the Asian Peninsula, around the Middle East, in terms of just shipping wars and the stealing? Did we lose you again? There you are. Okay, you're back. We will lose we won't lose it. We will abdicate the responsibility for any ship that ain't ours getting where it's going. And we will work with allies, I have no doubt, just like the Spanish and the French and the Brits did after they put away their sabers and started working together. And there will be welcome to the era of military ship blockades, on occasion, because there will be so many pirated ships.
Who knows?
Yes, there will be so many. Oh, he flipped his camera. It's like we're seeing.
Sorry, no, I'm trying to correct it since some jerk tried calling me.
So, you're absolutely right. The system as we have come to understand it for a long time. And by the way, I would argue bristle against, because the global trade, while these giant diverse supply chains were very functional for a period of time, they have outlived their usefulness as far as their necessity in terms of, tech stuff being built where the glass is refined in, in Indonesia, and the chips are, built in Taiwan or South Korea, and then they're assembled in China and boxed in Eastern Europe, and the paper comes from Pakistan or whatever. Like that, like when you're dealing on giant scales, and that's how these companies became $2-3 trillion companies in some cases. Every little bit matters. But what we've seen with both Russia and China is that the investment, the like COVID itself, but also this war is eating up any of the profit that would have existed by just doing it at home. That there is a tipping point coming, especially when it comes to China.
With an interconnected supply chain, with the globalist system that we had kind of envisioned, when that breaks down, as we saw during COVID, and now, and then again with this war as well, our interconnectivity, because it is a spider web, the plan was this, as you say, something's built in Greece, something's in Indonesia, something's in Venezuela, and then it all comes together and gets assembled in,
mostly in
Polynesia.
China. Mostly in China. And again, China doesn't make a lot of stuff. They don't manufacture stuff. They assemble most of the stuff that you have.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's gone. That's done. So, look, it's the world is. It's funny to see. We've talked about this being both Gen Xers. Is our entire life has been one earth-shattering, world-altering event after the next, and this is, even for a Gen Xer, this is a big one. And then we talk about AI coming on board as well. All this other stuff. The world is changing really quick,
right?
And I think part of it is we are finally seeing the end of the Second World War era, a post-Cold War era. We are now entering something entirely new, and it's down to, in many ways, the death of globalism, or this version of globalism. It's due to the pandemic and the vulnerabilities that exposed, and it's due to this war. And it's, things are going to be a lot different in 2024, 2025. Who knows? But it's, but there's also, change brings opportunity. So I like to stay optimistic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, over time, I mean, we had reached the end of that the return on investment on the global supply chain as it stood, because it was far too thin and far too precarious. I have no doubt that at some point down the line, because I have faith in human beings, that 100 years from now, people will figure out a way to get along and start playing everybody's talents again at some point. But the system we've been operating under for about 60 years is fucking dead. It's done. Did you see? I don't know if you saw the Super Bowl. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but I
didn't have a dog in that fight, so I didn't watch it. No.
Right. Well, the ads in it, the only one that really stood out to me was this. I think it's called Weimu. Weimu is a front for Alibaba. It's a rebranding of Alibaba, and they had this shop like a billionaire thing, and it's because. And they ran it all during it. And most people in the chat will remember this, I think, and will notice that ad has been showing up all over the internet. They have been there, the Chinese factories and have gotten together with the government over there, and they have funded Temu. Thanks. I'm thinking of Temu, Temu. And they, by the way, don't use the service. Just stay away from it. Just saying. That's my own personal opinion. Obviously, if you see a deal, I can't stop you. If you're a shopaholic, get help. But
they ran this Kaspersky antivirus either.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But
same reason.
They're trying to get rid of backed up exports that nobody wants anymore, and so they sell this stuff because it just stacks and stacks and stacks of rotting bullshit. And you know, and like the clothes will smell like formaldehyde, and that's just how it works. That's where they are right now. So they're doing this big fake company, Charm Offensive, to sell this stuff through there. And then Biden, of course, signs the order that the TikTok can't be on federal, any federal worker can't have TikTok on their phone anymore. That went into effect already. Now contractors, if you're a federal contractor, you cannot have TikTok on your phone.
Ooh.
And that's beyond the part where I'm like, I've been warning people the whole fucking time. I've been telling you guys, this is a psychological attack on a mass of people. The likes, like, we have been clamoring about MK Ultra and how the CIA was making assassins and blah 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 for years, and the Unabomber was controlled by Harvard, blah blah. And the same people who believe that with every fiber of their being, somehow can't even understand the thought of a foreign country going, you know, all we have to do is make these people fight and they'll punch each other in the face and hate each other. And it's not hard. All we have to do is tweak the algorithm so that that each side just gets driven into a more narrow, you know, side group, and then pick fights. It's easy. It's the same thing the Russians do. And so if you can believe MK Ultra, at least understand that we're not the most original people on earth ever, and countries throughout history have tried to do this through subversion and setting populaces against themselves and fomenting civil war and trying to gin up, you know, mental illness and all that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what TikTok was for. That's what the Chinese government was doing. It is for all practical purposes, in my opinion, it's a weapon. It's been a weapon. It's a soft power weapon meant to basically exaggerate the sickness in Western culture, make it look overwhelming, and turn people against their own country. And people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the QAnon crowd fell for it. And the Russians definitely helped. This is another thing. Like, they may be
Russians are excellent at it. I mean,
they've been doing that longer. They probably taught China a master class in it. I have no doubt, or you know, if they shared anything militarily,
the difference with the Russians is that they're very good at they're better than, I would argue, than the Chinese at understanding us. They know our fault lines better than the Chinese do because they've studied us.
The Chinese stuff is very ham-handed. It's very silly.
The Chinese stuff is very ham-handed, and I don't think they quite get the nuances aspect, and they don't understand the fault lines as well as the Russians do, because the Russians have studied us. I mean, God, they went, if they'd have had Facebook in the 1960s during the civil rights movement, I shudder to think.
Right.
You know, they know how to pit us against one another, and they've been doing it for arguably since the end of the 19th century, but that's going into history and stuff.
Right.
But in this current iteration, they've been doing it certainly since, you know, the turn of the 20th into the 21st century. I mean, Putin even admitted to it. He's repeatedly said that he that he would attack us. He has openly said that he intended to attack us even before the 2016 election, which again I contend was a military psyop. Information warfare program by the Russian GRU, the military intelligence unit. Look, we got to stop pretending that Russia is just like an adversary on the global stage. No, they're an enemy. They have attacked us. They will continue to attack us. They are one of the nice things that I do. Well, nice. Mm-hmm. One of the beneficial things of them ripping off the mask and actually doing something like this Ukrainian war is that it isn't just the Americans and the American population who are recognizing that Russia is a danger, is a risk to international stability. The Europeans, who are so risk averse because of their history, have finally woken up and are like, no, we're not even going to. I mean, like, I don't know if you saw recently, there was a meeting of the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and of which Russia is on the board, is on the executive committee. And a lot of people are very upset about that. And when their delegation began to present a report or their position basically to the OSCE, the rest of the room, the entire room, got
Yes.
up and walked out.
Walked
And they
out.
just were
Yeah.
like, we don't want to listen to what you say because all you do is lie.
Right.
And that's a big move.
Yeah.
That's a big
And
shift.
Yeah, and again, there's going to be a bunch of attempts to put the toothpaste back in the tube, but in reality,
Yeah.
none of it's going to work. And I want people to understand that they kind of, to some degree, have to steel themselves against, the kind of Jason Voorhees lurching that will happen as this thing dies, because there's always, there is no future, and I tend not to speak in too many absolutes, except there is no Hunter Biden laptop. Still, nobody's added me, even after all this time. But in the case, or around this stuff, where it involves millions, if not billions, of people operating the levers that can change things. But there is no situation where China dominates the world going forward. If they had ever had a chance at it, it was 15 years ago. They were headed in a trajectory, and they intentionally, and I guess with like wanton disregard for reality, threw it all in a fucking chipper shredder. Like, they fucked up their one
and as
shot.
far as Russia is concerned, I mean, they are
Same
not
thing.
coming back to the table anytime soon.
No.
Not until they do the hard work internally. I think there is a recognition internationally, certainly within the West, that we kind of screwed up in '91. We thought that we could bring them in to the family of nations, and we can't. They need to do the hard work that they have deferred for literally centuries. It's time for them to grow up and be a real country, not just an amalgamation of power guy, of a feudalistic society of boyars and barons and some guy at the top. It's time to grow up and do the hard work. It's going to be very difficult for them, but until they do it, we can't let them back in because they're dangerous and they're poisonous.
Right. Well, and that's
mercy. Boy, here it comes.
Yep, understood. I still believe, looking back, as someone who I've been confronting a lot of my own early naivete, my 90s naivete. I've been looking back at it so fondly in some ways. As somebody, who's in my first 10 years of studying wushu, from my instructor, by the way, whose family escaped Beijing, which should have been a red flag in general. Like, he talked pretty fondly about the place, and he still had friends there. And during the opening of it, they were, they're like, yeah, I've got friends over there, and if you want to go, I went and trained with one of their friends, one of my Sifu's friends over there in the early 2000s after I, got a series and could afford to fly overseas, as opposed to a scrambling actor.
Yeah.
But it never, it didn't really rhyme. I was like, oh, that was then, this is now. That, that he had to escape back when it was bad. Kind of like, like White Knights, or one of the, movies about defectors in the, Moscow on the Hudson, like movies about Russians who were trying to get out of Russia. But after 91, now you can come and go as you please. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
And I think, yeah. Well, it was.
And it should be. I'm sorry, but it's true. And I've said, and again, this is something that I have said for many years. And I've said to you,
I will.
Is that in our hubris after 1991, we thought that our system would be the system that would go east. And what happened instead was their corrupt, poisonous infection of just might makes right, and just there's no other way. Their corruption and their criminality that fled out, that oozed out, and we got a lot of cleaning in our own backyard that we have to do from all of that infection. So, but it's never going to be. Now we only got about 8 minutes left here. I got to talk to you something
about
that we
Fox.
don't normally talk about. You and I.
Somebody else want to bring up the Fox thing. Make
we
sure we go
normally
back.
keep to the topic of, Ukraine, Russia,
Yeah,
the war, that kind of stuff.
sure.
But I spent 25 years working in media,
Hmm.
and I spent a good 10 years off and on, and 2 years as staff working for Fox. So
Hmm.
all of this recent talk about the Murdoch deposition,
Oh yeah,
and all this information about Fox and whether or not Fox is a proper news organization, or is there well, anyhow, all the discussion
yeah,
about Fox that's going on right now. Speaking of from a person who worked for them for a very long time,
yeah.
uh, I mean, it is not just their editorial division. The problem is, it's 100% true. This kind of, it's not red or blue, it's green, because at the end of the day, it's about making money for Fox and
Right,
keeping an audience and making sure that that audience doesn't go to Newsmax.
right.
So I was a producer in the Fox London bureau, and I worked in London, and as a Russia expert, I would
Yeah,
often pitch Russia stories, and it just would be talking to a brick wall. They were completely unresponsive, not interested at all. Now that might be because there was a chunk of that time that I was working there during the Trump era, and to even mention the Russia word would bring
right.
up this Russia,
Would
the
set him
Russia Gate
off.
stuff. So
Right.
they wanted to stay away from Russia. That's, it's not legitimate, but that might explain it. But I think it's worse than that, frankly,
Mm.
because in the many years that I worked for Fox in foreign bureaus, not just in London, but traveling around the world,
Right.
for Fox News,
Yeah.
and this is just the way it is. They only cared about stories on the international stage when it had to do with brown people, brown or black people, in two different ways.
Hmm.
Either they were terrorists and they were coming to kill you,
Sure.
or they were immigrants and they were coming to take your jobs, ruin your
And then kill you.
economy, and sleep with your women.
Right. And then kill
Those are
you.
the
Yeah.
only two. Um, I mean, no,
Yeah.
80% of the stories that I did fell within that umbrella. We don't want to hear about. We don't want to hear about. There was a story one day where the Crown Court in Britain
Right.
was going to rule on whether or not uh, 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 what is it, gig economy guys like Uber guys
Right.
could legitimately do that, because they were chipping away from the black cab, the iconic black cab in London, where they have to
Hmm.
spend years and tens, if not
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their licenses, and they need to
Yeah.
be really well trained. That some guy who loses his job at McDonald's can get a GPS and suddenly
Hmm.
be an Uber driver. So the Crown Court, and I thought that's a no brainer for us.
Hmm.
It's Uber. It's a Seattle based,
Yeah.
app. It's this whole big question of the gig economy,
Yep.
and it's easy to do. All you do is you get a camera crew, you hop in the back of a black cab, and you have them drive you around for a couple of hours,
Right.
bitching and whining and moaning. Easy TV.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's do this. And they were like, no, there are a bunch of brown people that broke down a fence in Serbia, trying to. I think it was Serbia.
Oh,
It might have
right.
been. It
Yeah.
might have been Czech
Yeah.
or
It was.
Slovak or something.
Right.
And it was like
I remember that.
it was this light bulb moment for me, where it's like, you really only care about news out of the international world when it has to do with people of color, and
Acting poorly
in the two variants that I explained.
in their version.
And
Their
it's
version of things.
not
Yeah.
just their editorial, it's their news division, because it's about money, and they
Mm.
know very well that the audience that they serve isn't going to give a hoot about
Right.
a story about an Uber driver, even the relevancy being much more important to an American audience, in my humble opinion.
Hmm.
No, they only want to hear the thing that reinforces their worldview. Fox is and this is me having worked for them, it's a disgusting organization. It is not just their editorial, it is their hard news division. There are
Right.
good journalists working there, but they are trapped under that system. And in order to get a paycheck and pay rent and a mortgage and raise your kids,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
might turn a blind eye to it. But at the end of the day, they don't give a fuck about doing the news.
Right.
They care about making money, and it's even
Yeah.
more cynical than a worldview that is racist and is regressive. It's at the end of the day about the bottom line and making money. And Fox, in my opinion, needs to be taken off the air. But that's probably not going to
Right.
happen. But
Well, no,
I just
again,
wanted to clear the air about that because I have a certain amount of expertise and
Yeah.
knowledge in that area.
Yeah.
Our media landscape is really in trouble. And I'm glad that some of this stuff is being revealed in public. But any of the audience members who have family members that say, oh, yeah, but I watch Fox and I get my news from it. I don't listen to the editorial stuff. And I know
Right.
people like that too.
Sure.
But I say to them,
That's again,
It's-
this would, I would argue, this is
throughout
how
the
the
entire
TYT
network.
shit happens. This is, look, it only,
yeah, it's the same with TYT.
A
Oh,
hook
not the
only
same.
works if it's got a worm on it. And the worm is a certain manageable amount of real news, in that particular case for older people, that's in the middle of the day that serves you up to the people at night to fill your head with that stuff. And I'm sure to some degree they feel the same way. Well, the right feels that way about the entire lineup of MSNBC, so I can't even say that. But the idea being is that, and not and it would be one thing, because I don't think there's any such thing as a reality bias. I think that once, Trump always clamors about these people who used to work for him and then suddenly turn against him. And they're automatically probably a Democrat the whole time, only got me coffee, barely know the guy, somebody else recommended him, all that kind of shit that he talks about. And it's because the person went into open-eyed, I suppose, to go work for this dude thinking, finally, we got an outsider and a businessman who's going to do this. And then because he's fucking gross, they got to look at the evidence. And from that point on, they can't let it slide anymore. And so they start extracting themselves from the situation and talking shit about the guy anytime somebody brings him up, because they're not just talking shit, they're warning other people, stay away from this motherfucker. And then eventually he's like, they were always deep state and blah, blah, blah. That's where that storyline comes from. So
well, I had hoped that there would be a new way of doing this in the new media landscape, but I'm increasingly finding, sadly, that it isn't. I mean, there are outlets. Obviously, you and I, we're here talking, speaking our minds, and doing, and we're. It's out there if you want to find it.
It's as messy as democracy.
Right. I think it's also with the TYT crowd. I think there's others out there. I guess I don't want to just bash on TYT or Fox, but at the end of the day, when the priority becomes, when the priority becomes financial, and when the priority becomes reinforcing a worldview, so that you then get an audience share, so that you then get financial support, that's not a remedy. That's just switching things up to a different paradigm. We have to figure out a way, and we used to have it in the fairness doctrine, which we don't have time to go into in great detail, but that's that was chipped away beginning with Clinton and killed under Bush.
Well, Reagan went after it.
Reagan went after
it in the 80s. You're absolutely right. Again, we are we're not, I guess we would say we're in the Wild West of media right now, because there was an established functioning system that, with all of its flaws, solved the problem it was asked to solve in the NBC, CBS nightly news. And then, interestingly enough, right about the time the Vietnam War was happening, the nightly news started paying more attention to it, because that's what the audience demanded, or demanded not to see, and they showed it anyways, because it was the news. And the news went, look, I'm not showing you what you want to hear, I'm showing you what's happening. You can make up your own mind about that. And that was the way the 60s news were. And it broke a lot of people. And they started, I want to hear my take on it, because I don't like this person's take on what I'm seeing, because I don't want to necessarily see this, or I don't feel good about it, or what have you. And so it built this thing that eventually grew into cable news 24/7. And if you need an example of why, and then we get to us.
And then when cable news came on the scene,
Yeah.
It further chipped away at the fairness doctrine because there used to be a limitation on monopolizing. You couldn't own more than, I think it was, you couldn't own more than 3 local radio stations that overlap. I'd have to go
Right.
back to my old college days to the specifics
Yeah.
of it. But there used to be a situation where you couldn't be the only one voice in any one market. And when cable news came on and it was a nationwide thing, that called into question this idea of, well, what is a monopoly if you
Right.
are no longer in a market, but rather you are now a nationwide 24-hour. So that called into
Right.
question, further chipped away the fairness doctrine, and allowed space for a thing like Fox to develop. But I want to
Right.
I'll tell you one quick story before we end up here.
Yeah.
And it goes into this whole thing. So a dear friend of mine, a very, very dear friend of mine, who was my mentor, my best friend, my battle buddy. We went through the Iraq War together. We went through the Afghanistan War together. He made me the assistant bureau chief in Baghdad at CBS. He was a 40-year veteran of CBS, and he was
Right.
working in the 80s at
Right.
CBS in what's called the Bull, which is the nerve center for CBS News,
Uh-huh.
the news division. And he tells the story of one day when the executive producer of the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite was not on time for an editorial meeting, which was very out of character for him. And the entire news staff was really very much concerned. Finally showed up about 45 minutes late to a meeting, which was unheard of. He walked into the room and he sat down, and everybody was on, kind of nervous about what had happened here. And he said, okay, so I've just come from the corporate headquarters for CBS, not CBS News, CBS, the entire network.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
good news and there's bad news. What would you prefer first? And after 45 minutes of anxiety, they said, well, tell us the good news first. And the executive producer of a Cronkite show said, for the first time in its history, CBS News Division, because of 60 Minutes and the ratings it got last Sunday, has turned a profit, and for the first time in its history, CBS News Division has turned a profit. And everybody went, oh, that's great. That's fantastic. What's the bad news? And he said, because of 60 Minutes ratings on last Sunday's show, they have turned a profit for the first time in CBS News Division's history, and they're now, running in the black. The message being, they turned a profit for the corporate entity at CBS Network
Right.
last Sunday. They're going to want it next Sunday too.
Yep.
And that's when it stopped being about news and it became about money. And I contend that Fox is a result of that. It is one of the most egregious examples of it, but it's not the only one. We really have to, and both old media, quote unquote, old media, legacy media, corporate media, whatever you want to call it, mainstream media, which I think is an idiotic term, by the way.
Sure.
And also in whatever it is you and I are conducting here. And I'm not, I'm not saying we're at fault, because I think, we're at least being honest about this. And our intentions are honest. But I see others like TYT or other online guys.
Most of the time they play news.
Crowder and his ilk.
Yeah. They recreate
who are
something
looking at
seen
this
before.
in much the same way, in that it's about profit. We have to do something about our media landscape. We really do. And this Fox stuff is
I completely agree. And for those that don't know, like Rupert Murdoch was deposed in the Dominion lawsuit. And what's coming out from a lot of what Dominion is releasing is that it wasn't so much that the Fox had hired a bunch of conspiratorial-minded nudniks that were walking on the air and going, oh my God, Dominion stole the election. They walked on the air and were bullshitting their entire audience that they believed it or bought into it, while behind the scenes going, this is a bunch of nonsense, which means one of two things. Either they are politically connected specifically to a party or an individual in the form of Donald Trump, trying to guarantee and his control over the country and directly participating in the manipulation of the electorate to do so, which is bad, or they are following the orders of Rupert Murdoch to do that because Rupert Murdoch is directly affiliated with the RNC or Donald Trump or both. And also in addition to
that, they were terrified of telling their audience something their audience didn't want to hear, because there were up and comers on the right in the broadcast landscape like Newsmax, and they were afraid that they would lose their audience share,
Mm-hmm.
and in
And
so
they did
doing
for a while.
lose their money.
They did for
Yeah,
they
the
had
two
3
are not
weeks of that
mutually
shit.
exclusive. They can both be politically corrupted in supporting the GOP and being the mouthpiece for the GOP, and they can also be in it for the cash. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Do you mind if I do my thing with stoic optimism and put a silver lining spin on this whole thing, which I think is particularly lovely? Newsmax and everybody who works there now knows that the fairness doctrine would have saved them from being kicked off of DirecTV.
Yeah.
And they have to wallow in the pig shit that they themselves, I guess, made through their own consumption of Ronald Reagan's nonsense. They have to recognize that their status would have been protected had Reagan not done that and had the fairness doctrine still been in existence. And that it was effectively their anti-regulation, and proto-soft monopoly activities basically fuck them. That's why they're there. Like Fox,
well,
like,
as a journalist,
they literally would have.
As a journalist who still believes in the importance of journalism and the importance of the fourth estate in providing information to an electorate so that they can make an informed decision on their vote in a functioning democracy. We have to find a solution. This is an area where I am not as optimistic as I am about other things, but I am not pessimistic either. But it's going to be hard. But we need to do it because we got to fix this because there's too much chaos.
I think the Wild West is a great analogy for where we are in the media landscape right now. Because at one point you can say that there was, the initiation of the colonial powers or the breakaway of the British government or whatever, but there was a functioning system before everybody started to expand west and it became crazy. And help was 9 days away, at best. And so everybody just kind of did their own thing. And it got, after years of stability, got insane. And there were gunfights everywhere and all kinds of crazy shit happened. And you didn't know who to trust. And the sheriff could be, in one town, he could be the most trustworthy person in the town. And in the next town over, he could be the most corrupt person there. And, and that's where we are with the Wild West. The big three that used to exist. And then in the case of the BBC in England, it had a limited window. And so they felt a responsibility in that limited window. This is the argument about, by the way, you'll see this sometimes when the argument comes up about robber barons, like the old corporate overlords back in the 20s and 30s, actually being better than the boards that we have now because the family name was on the line. So as they could only act so shitty, or they would fuck up the entire, Carnegie endowment or the Wrigley, families, whatever. Now it's 20 different rotating dudes, and there's always somebody, a different guy at the top, and the company is the company is the company. And instead of, Wrigley Field, you have like Equifax Field. And so you can't really go, who's the motherfucker who came up with that idea? Like the guy who gave us mad cow disease by suggesting we feed rendered cows to cows because it's cheaper than feed, and literally started that was a dude on a board. There was a guy there who crunched the numbers, raised his hand at a fucking meeting and said, we have all this rendered dry bone, tendon, other shit. It's got protein and fiber in it. Why don't we just feed that to them? What the fuck is corn for? Why don't we feed it back to them? You go, well, because cannibalism causes bovine spongiform encephalitis and will kill people. And you're like, will it though? But if that had been we don't know his name. We don't know which guy at the board said that. But if it had been the Rockefellers and, Joe Rockefeller went, today we come up with a great plan, everybody. Gather around, workers on the ground. We're going to do this from now on. They'd burn his house down. They would have pilloried the dude. And there was some element of a check on that. Same thing with with CBS, NBC, ABC, to some degree, I guess early Fox, we hope, we wish. And then the BBC is that because they were aware they were the window and they were aware of like Nazi propaganda and things like that, they had to make a distinction. Like they had to be genuine. Now, as a matter, that will fuck your entire profit scheme. That will ruin you if you're just. And that's what the Fox thing was proving, was that these guys couldn't tell the truth, or their audience would leave and go let Newsmax lie to them. Because I'm not looking for news. I'm lie shopping. That's what that is. They are their audience.
I want my worldview reinforced.
Exactly. And I would say, the only thing I would say to our audience before we sign off, and bless you for sticking around and talking about this and adding this on, because it's a great conversation to have. The only thing I would add on top of that is that you can only castigate someone else for that behavior so much. The only value any criticism you might have about this kind of behavior is on your own recognition of where you might fall for it sometimes. And so that's what I would say, and I think you would agree, is that our own audience...
People hate it when I say this, but there's also a responsibility. You as a consumer of news also have a responsibility to seek out. I know you would prefer to be a passive, just sit there and inform me. Well, sorry.
Right.
The difficulty is, the sad news is, it's a two-way street, and you have a responsibility to find reliable sources, a variety of sources, and don't just take thing on prima facie.
There's a thin line in most people's, and usually it's the laziness of the human condition, between dubious and cynic. And what you will find is that the people who cannot who cannot solve your dubious concerns, their next goal, and the Russians do this all the time, we talk about this a lot, the next job is, if I can't, I know I'm not going to win the conversation because I'm bullshitting you. So you've got to, I'm not going to win you over. So now I've got to just tell you the world is full of bullshit. Everybody's wrong. It's all wrong. And then I trigger your cynicism. Anybody. At the very least, I get you to check out. And that's what keeps people from voting. It's what keeps people from participating in deeper conversations about stuff that are valuable. I don't know what it is, but we manage to have these conversations that everybody else seems to get canceled and flipped out about on a very measured way. And I can't think of a single time when we really had a problem. And again, some people, their biggest problem is they're just too stupid for the topic they take on. But the goal is to be. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of people who are the conversation.
Yes, absolutely right.
Topic is totally important.
On this the Ukraine war topic. I mean, I'm here. And yet there are people sitting pontificating about this stuff who've never been to a war, and they've never been to Russia. But
my Azov battalion. But
debate me, Aaron Monte. Come on.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyhow, just to wrap this up, as I say, you, an audience member, are responsible for the information that you consume.
Yep.
So seek out good information. Be an active participant in your news consumption. And one fine way of getting proper news and proper information is to listen and watch the HAL Sparks.
Oh, come on now. I thought, yes, and fill it, yes. I was.
I'm excluding myself.
Check out your.
I have no shame. I have no shame.
No, it's good.
I will not lie to you. I may not be right.
I will say this,
but I won't lie to you
in defense of that, in defense of that pitch, I would line up my record and your record about what's gone on in this over the last year in terms of what we've been talking about, about how, look at what we said, and it stands. Everything that we've said, and look at the other people who are like even the Ukraine's gonna fall crowd that have been saying it since day 2. In 3 weeks, it's all fucking over, like those crowd. If you listen to them a third time, at a certain point, it's your ass.
And the corporate guys, the guys that are working for the network, they're working as best they can. I am not going to shit on my former colleagues.
Right?
In the
I guess you mean.
They are working within the limitations of the industry in which they work. It is part of the reason why I chose not to participate and to do it the way I'm doing it. My audience is not particularly large, but I can do this with integrity, and I can do it with looking myself in the mirror and my own way of doing it. Those guys who are doing it with the backing of a network, they are working within the limitations of the network and that system, but they are doing the best they can on the ground here, oftentimes in very precarious situations.
Sure.
So I'm not going to shit on them. I'm just arguing that
that's the natural limitation
way to do it.
Yeah, that's the natural limitation where they are, and you,
Yeah.
And I agree. I
Anyhow.
think you are doing it. Yeah, and I'll sign off on this too. I absolutely agree that you that you are doing this because you want to do it out of integrity and in your own way. I just have too big of a potty mouth. I think I could probably, if like I could
I've been
manage
known.
to shoehorn my shit in.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't play nice with others when they get when they toe the corporate line and they're kind of like, well, we have to keep this package to a 2-minute 50, a 2-minute 15 package because we got to sell toothpaste in the first break, so we can't do it. And I'm like,
but they still
no, fuck
manage to.
that.
Look, again, we're this is a Midwestern goodbye, and I know these. And yes, I do read the chats, by the way. But I think it's amazing on morning news, and we used to see this on WGN all the time. When people like they do a horrifying, awful story. Somebody punts a baby into a chipper shredder. Was it murder and accident?
Next, we'll show you a squirrel that water skates.
Well, and then they have to go to a commercial.
The water skates.
Or and immediately, and it's like the Snuggle ad, and you're like, I always notice that the most offensive ad after a horrible story is a Snuggle ad because it's it's just an attempt at a butt aimed Disney cartoon, and the shock is
I hope we'll find a
amazing.
solution to it.
We will, but
All right, Al,
but the solution will
pleasure.
be the work. You too, brother. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Right. We'll talk to you on
Saturday.
Saturday.
Talk to you on Saturday.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Be well. All right, pal. Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone for listening. All right.
Absolutely.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. There he goes. And thank you guys so much. And don't forget to hit the likey thing. Just hit the like. Do I have one of the like? Yeah, there we go. Did it go when I came back in? There we go. This thing. Smash the like. Devil magic. Oh my God. All right. And I will see you guys this afternoon at 3:00 for the afternoon show. Obviously, we have far too much to cover since I didn't have a show yesterday. I'm always behind the 8 ball. There is always plenty of stupid out there to mine. That said, I ruminate if you would. Think, postulate for yourself an internalized, procedurally step forward into the articulate nature of just look. When you're watching the news, be good at parsing out what the person is saying that they can prove and what they can't. And you don't have to be hostile to the person saying it and assume that they mean you ill. You can simply go, oh, okay, but that's just like your opinion, man. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay that they have opinions. It's okay that you disagree with their opinions at times. But just get better at understanding what part are they saying that's opinion, what part is actually material fact. And by the way, what part are they presenting possibly as material fact that they cannot prove specifically? And it's okay to be dubious in those moments. It should be a regular thing. Also, unless you've met someone online, in person at some sort of gathering, just assume they're not who they say they are and interact like they're a stranger at the grocery store. You don't need to let them in your car. You don't need to, take any of their insults to heart. Trolling doesn't work anymore. I apologize to the trolls that are here, but, sorry, you're out of a job. Nobody cares. Trolling just does not have the impact. I'm sorry. Anyways, love you guys. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And I will see you this afternoon. Okay.